Hello everyone. Last class we studied regarding the chapter 5 life processes. We studied what do you mean by life processes regarding that introduction, and even we studied what do you mean by autotrophic mode of nutrition and the process called photosynthesis also. So here in these next 30 minutes we are going to learn what do you mean by um, heterotrophic mode of nutrition, and in which we will learn what do you mean by the heterotrophic mode of nutrition and nutrition in unicellular organism, as well as we will learn nutrition in human beings also. Let's start. So here the flowchart, you can see what do you mean by that heterotrophic mode of nutrition. We studied the autotrophic mode of nutrition means the organisms have that ability to prepare their own food. Example, we studied the plants and the simple bacteria. And here the word called that heterotrophic mode of nutrition or heterotrophic nutrition. Here you have to remember whenever you learn biology, just you have to remember that keywords. Inside that keyword itself, you will find that answer. So here the heterotrophic mode of nutrition or heterotrophic nutrition. The hetero means others, means the organism which are depending on others for their food. Here we can see holozoic mode of nutrition, saprophytic mode of nutrition, and parasitic mode of nutrition. We'll start with the first. What do you mean by that parasitic mode of nutrition? Here, the parasitic mode of nutrition, the organisms which are taking the parasitic mode of nutrition, we can call it as parasites. As we learn, the autotrophic mode of nutrition is the plants which are preparing their own food. We can call it as autotrophs. Here also same thing. The parasitic mode of nutrition, the organism which are involving it, we can call it as the parasites. The parasites are the one they live inside or outside the organism. That organism we can call it as a host and derive the nutrition from it. An example, Cuscuta, it's the plant. Even we can see that the leech and earthworm, so on. And here we can see that saprophytic mode of nutrition. Here the organisms feed on dead and decaying matter, means the organisms which is obtaining that food from that other organism, especially in this case the saprophytic mode of nutrition. As we know that fungi which can obtain that food from the dead and decaying matter, simply breaking down the complex substances into the simple substances outside that organism, later it will obtain that food. Examples, fungi. Next one, last one, that is that holozoic mode of nutrition. That most of the animals, actually all that animals which we can see in the form of holozoic mode of nutrition, animals take in the solid food and break down inside the body. Example, amoeba and animals. Just you can compare with the saprophytic and parasitic, what exactly it's happening in here. Parasitic mode of nutrition, the organisms which are living inside or that outside that organisms, and it is taking that food. It's not killing even saprophytic mode of nutrition, which is taking the food or obtaining that food from the dead and decaying matter. Here the holozoic mode of nutrition, the organisms are that animals which are taking that solid substances in the form of the food, which the food whatever we are taking, the breakdown is happening inside that body. Example, the animals example, just like us human being. Now here you can see some of the pictures regarding the saprophytic mode of nutrition and the parasitic mode of nutrition. This is also parasitic mode of nutrition pictures. And as I mentioned, the parasitic mode of nutrition, here you can see that yellow color. The first one is the plant, which we can see that thread-like structure, Cuscuta. even leech and ascaris. Coming to the next one. Actually, most of the time in your CBSE, they are asking the difference between parasitic mode of nutrition and saprophytic mode of nutrition. And along with that, we have to learn the holozoic mode of nutrition even in single cellular organism like amoeba and paramecium. Even we will learn that elaborate content regarding that digestion in human beings. So here, how do organisms obtain their food? So even we can see that food, the heterotrophs, even the unicellular single cell organisms, the food is taken up through the entire surface area. Example, amoeba and paramecium. Like whenever you study regarding that holozoic mode of nutrition, we have to learn in the form of the five steps which I included here, that is ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, digestion. Like just you can think regarding these five steps. Can we see this all the five steps in single cellular organism like the amoeba, whatever which you are able to see on the screen? Can we see this all the processes? Yes, you are right. Even single cellular organism like the amoeba also, we can see this all the five steps in the form of ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and digestion. Just you can observe that the picture which is there regarding the nutrition in amoeba. In nutrition in amoeba, as we know that the amoeba is that unicellular organism, they don't have any special type of the body parts like us to intake that food. Means we have that hands to take that food, and even we have that mouth and buccal cavity, esophagus, so and so. Means since we are the multicellular organism, we have the complex body structure. Each and every part has a different specific functions to do it. But what about the amoeba? Since it is a unicellular organism, can we see any mouth? Can we see any hand inside that amoeba? No. But but even the amoeba does not have any body parts also, which we can see all these five processes. It's very important. Mm, Nutrition in amoeba, or even we can call it as digestion in amoeba. Sometime it will ask for the two most question. The diagram is also very important. Here, the amoeba, whenever uh, they require food, if the food particles which are surrounded by very close to the amoeba, simply which the amoeba will extension of the cell membrane, means which will extends, it will create that finger-like structures called the pseudopodia. That the pseudopodia is nothing but the extension of cell membrane, which will create the finger-like projections. Even we can see in the mm, B, the pseudopodia, which is helping to engulf that food. Means what do you mean by the engulfing of the food? Engulfing of the food is nothing but intaking of the food. Just you can see that one, ingestion. Ingestion is nothing but it is the process of intake of food material in food material. Like even see, like we here we completed the first process, ingestion. Like what is the next process? Digestion. Like whenever the food which is intaking through the pseudopodia inside that amoeba, which will create that food vacuole. In even you can see in that picture number C, means inside that amoeba, which is creating that food vacuole. Inside that, we can see that food particles. Now, what do you mean by the digestion? Digestion is nothing but it is a process of conversion of large organic molecules, whatever it's obtained from, and it has to be break down into the simple one, that is called digestion. The breakdown of complex substances into the simple substances. Now here we are going to learn how this breakdown is happening here. The digestion of food which is happening inside that food vacuole. Here you have to remember one thing, They don't have any stomach, they don't have any enzymes, they don't have any other other component in it to digest that all the one. But here we can see some of the digestive enzymes which is there in that food vacuole, which is helping to break down that complex substance into the simple one. Later, the absorption will take place. Whatever the digested food which is there inside the amoeba, that food will absorption will takes place in the amoeba. This you have to remember this word by the using the simple process called the diffusion. As we know that the diffusion is nothing but the movement of higher concentration to the lower concentration region. Even we can see that in gases and other materials also. Here, the process simple diffusion is helping to absorb that food, that entire surface area. And what do you mean by that assimilation? Like whenever that amoeba, which is required the food in the form of to grow to the cellular repair, that anything, that food will be assimilate. Means it is nothing but the assimilation is nothing but the utilization of the food to get that energy and that all the metabolic functions also. And the last one, digestion. Like as we know that any biological activities or any chemical process, even uh, in general day-to-day life, may we can see that whenever some of that activities which will take place, automatically we will see that the byproduct. Example, sugarcane. So whenever we need the sugar juice, just we need to keep that sugar cane inside that machine. We will get the sugar cane juice, and along with that, we will get that waste material. So are we are using that waste material? No, only we are using the sugar cane juice to get that energy. And here also, like whatever the food which is breaking down into the simple form, which is utilized in the form of assimilation, that undigested food in unicellular organism, even that animals like us also, it is very, very dangerous in our body. It has to be eliminated from the body. That will happen in the form of the egestion. Egestion is nothing but the removal of excretory waste, or even we can call it as undigested weight. Here, it doesn't have any special structures to remove that undigested food in the amoeba, which will create the rupture of the cell membrane, which will take place through which that waste food material will come out. So whenever you write regarding the nutrition in the amoeba, you have to write the 5 steps, and even you have to remember that keyword called that finger-like projections or the structures called pseudopodia. It's very, very important. Next, we can see some of the animated videos regarding this, and this is also even along with that amoeba in our textbook, even we have that single cellular organism called that paramecium. That structure, whatever we can see in the left side, it's a paramecium. Here, when you see that amoeba, it has that unicellular organism, but they don't have any defined structure. But here in paramecium, we can see the defined structure. All the 5 processes are same, but here we can see instead of creating that finger-like projections, which we can see here, the oral groove, which is helping to intake that food, that all the process will same, and here ingestion will take place by through the anal pore. And even then in the paramecium, we can see the cilia which is helping to um, obtain the food, and which is flush that food near to the oral groove. Some of the pictures how exactly the pseudopodium is creating. This is that real picture. So here you can see, like we can see the digestion, absorption, assimilation, digestion, everything. So coming to the next one, it's a very, very important one. With this, we will wind up this today's session. Nutrition in human beings. As we know that the humans are that omnivorous, they can eat plant-based food as well as animal-based food. Being more complex, humans have a very complicated nutrition system. Can we see like whatever we learned just now regarding that unicellular organism, like this entire complex structure inside that one? Yes or no? No. But since we have that multicellular organism, we have that different organ system for the different functions. Here we have that human digestive system to do to break down the complex substances into the simple one. Here you can see that human digestion system will start with that mouth, buccal cavity, the long food pipe called that esophagus, which will connect it to the stomach, later small intestine, large intestine, and end with anus. And can we see along with this one any extra part here? Yes, we can see extra parts are accessory organs, that is salivary glands, liver, and pancreas. The digestive system has an alimentary canal and associated with the digestive glands, which together function to nourish the body. What do you mean by alimentary canal and associated with the digestive glands? Alimentary canal, like whatever just now we saw here, it is from esophagus to the anal, is that alimentary canal, and digestive glands, even in the mouth, we can see that salivary glands, and along with that, liver and pancreas are that accessory digestive glands. These are very, very important words. And as we discussed in any holozoic mode of nutrition, we can see that all the steps: ingestion, digestion, absorption, here it is assimilation is missing, and digestion will take place through the alimentary canal, and assimilation of food takes place in the whole body. And here you have to remember, for the stage ingestion, digestion, absorption, and digestion takes place in the alimentary canal, but assimilation of food takes place in the whole body. Means like we cannot say exactly the one place to observe utilization of the food, like each and every part of the body it needs the food. That's the reason we can see that the assimilation of the food takes place in the whole body. So this is the picture. We can see that entire digestive system. And here you have to, you no need to draw exactly what is there in your textbook. Just you have to make sure that all the digestive system parts, to label the parts, should be in the proper way. Even where is that esophagus, axillary glands like the liver, pancreas, these are very important. So the alimentary canal in the human beings is a long tube. It starts with the mouth and ends with the anus. Here you can see that oral cavity is the mouth and end with the anus. Esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine are the parts of the alimentary canal. Actually, here also one another terminology. Whatever we learn that alimentary canal is that only one, but according to their function in the human digestive system, their structure and the function is different. According to their structure and function, we are giving the different names in the different parts. That is, the first one is esophagus. It is nothing but the food pipe. Later, stomach. It is the bag-like structures. We all know that. And the small intestine and the large intestine. These parts, the sequence also you have to remember as it is. And now we are going to learn what exactly it's happening in the all these element parts of the alimentary canal. First, we'll start with that mouth. The food is broken down into smaller particles by the teeth and mixed with the saliva from the salivary glands. Now, what I repeated to the word, like whatever the food we are taking, which will be break down by the teeth and along with mixed with the saliva. Here you have to remember, what do you mean by the saliva? Saliva is a just like the watery like substance which is released by the salivary glands. This you have to remember very, very careful. The salivary glands are releasing the saliva, in which the saliva consists of the salivary amylase, which is helping to break down the starch or the carbohydrates into the simple sugars called the maltose. So, what is the function of the salivary glands? It will release the saliva, in which the saliva consists of salivary amylase, which will break down that complex sugars in the form of the starch or the carbohydrates into the simple sugar called the maltose. So, here you can see the starch, salivary amylase, and maltose. Saliva contains enzyme salivary amylase which convert the starch into the maltose. This is the first one. It's very important. The first enzyme and first one. And what is the purpose of having that enzymes in that any digestive system? What do you mean by that enzymes? The enzymes are the chemicals which we can call it as a biocatalyst, which are helping to break down the complex substances into the simple one. These are the NCRT line. The enzymes are the biocatalysts, which are helping to break down complex substances into the simple one. Next, whatever the partially digested food which is there in the mouth, then the food passes through the esophagus into the stomach. Here, like how the food is moving from the mouth to the stomach. What exactly is happening? Whenever you take that food, we'll swallow that food which will move from the mouth to the entire alimentary canal. How it is happening? Here, the movements are called as a peristalsis or the peristaltic movement. The peristaltic movement is nothing but here you can see in the first, second picture, the contractions of walls of alimentary canal means the peristalsis or the peristaltic movement is nothing but the rhythmic contractions and relaxations of walls of esophagus is called the peristalsis or the peristaltic movement. Actually, sometime it will come for your MCQs or objective question. What do you mean by the peristalsis? The peristalsis is nothing but, again, I'm repeating, the rhythmic contractions and relaxations of walls of esophagus is called peristalsis or peristaltic movement. This process which is helping to move the food from the mouth to the stomach, from the even the small intestine, the large intestine, every like in the all that alimentary canal, these processes which is helping to move the food. So, can we see any digestion in the esophagus? No, there is no digestion will take place, only which is helping to pass the food from the mouth to stomach. Here you have to remember in the stomach, as you know that the stomach is a J-shaped or the bag-like structure. In the stomach, we can see that the gastric glands produce that gastric juice, which contains the enzyme called pepsin, HCl. That HCl is nothing but the hydrochloric acid and the mucus. And here, what is the function of these three, mucus, HCl, and pepsin? As we know that the pepsin is that enzyme which will help in breakdown of the food. But along with that, what do you mean by this too? HCl will help to help in conversion of pepsinogen into pepsin. What do you mean by this one? Means in presence of HCl, the pepsinogen with the enzyme pepsinogen, which will be there in that which will be there in that inactive form, in presence of HCl, which will convert it into the active form of the pepsin. So, what is the function of that pepsin? The pepsin, which is helping to break down that proteins into amino acids. Next, what is the function of the mucus? The mucus is that jelly-like substance which is protecting that inner walls of the stomach. And along with that, As you know that the HCl is the corrosive in nature. How our stomach is protecting from this HCl? By having that the layer called the mucus, which is helping to protect the inner walls of the stomach. Hydrochloric acid makes that medium acidic to help that activation of the pepsin that we learn. The pepsinosin in the presence of HCl, it will convert that to pepsin, and the pepsin will break down that uh, proteins into the amino acid. This is also we study the mucus protect that walls of the stomach from the contention of that acids. Then the food passes into the small intestine through the pyrolic sphincter muscle. This is very, very, very important. Means the pyrolic sphincter muscle is the one which is helping to control or control the movement of the food from the stomach to the small intestine. So this is that pyrolic sphincter muscle which is helping to move that food from the stomach to the small intestine. And here the small intestine is not a small, but the small intestine of herbivorous is longer. Small intestine in carnivorous is shorter. Can anybody guess what is the purpose of this one? Means herbivorous means that the organism or that animal which is eats the grass. Carnivores means it can eat even the flesh, meat, and grass also. That herbivorous small intestine longer when compared to the carnivorous because it will eat that grass. The grass will consist of cellulose in it, which will take place, which will it will take longer time to digest that breakdown of the cellulose, which will take place little bit more time. That's the reason that herbivorous having that very longer small intestine when compared to the carnivorous, because the carnivorous will eat that meat and that the food which we cannot see that any cellulosic content, and the food mixed with the bile from the liver and pancreatic juice from the pancreas, as we mm, studied in the previous slides. Along with that alimentary canal, we have that digestive glands in the form of salivary glands, liver, and pancreas. Here, the pancreas will release release the pancreatic juices, which consist of bile juice and pancreatic amylase also. So, what is the function of the bile juice here? The bile breaks down the fats into the smaller globules. Here, you have to remember the bile break down fats into the smaller globules. Means the bile juice or the bile salt, it does not contain any enzymes in it, which will in the just even we can call it as it will emulsify the fats. So it will emulsify the fats, which means which will break down the larger substance into the smaller globules. Later on, it in the smaller globules, on the smaller globules, like whatever that mm, other digestive enzymes which is released by that digestive glands, lipase, which will act on the smaller fats globules, which will convert into the fatty acids. Now here you can see that the pancreatic juice contains enzymes called the trypsin and the lipase, and that trypsin will convert the proteins into the amino acids, and the lipase will act on that small fat globules into the, it will convert it into the fatty acids. in the small intestine, the glands of the walls of the small intestine produce that intestinal juice. The enzymes of that intestinal juice converts that carbohydrates into the glucose. This is very important. Fats into the fatty acids, and it will store in the form of the glycerol. This is also very, very important. It will store in the form of the glycerol and the proteins into the amino acids. And as we know that um, that complete digestion will take place in the small intestine, even absorption will also takes place in the small intestine itself only. The walls of small intestine has several finger-like projections called that villi, having blood vessels and the blood capillaries. It helps to increase the surface area for the absorption of digested food. Means the walls of the small intestine has several finger-like projections called villi, having blood vessels. So here inside the small intestine in the animals, especially that in the animals, it has that finger-like projections called that villi, which is helping to absorb that food, whatever the complete digestion which is happening in the small intestine. So what is the purpose of having the finger-like projections here? Which is helping to increase the surface area for the absorption of digested food. This is very, very important word. Villi, and how that villi is increasing the surface area. What is that answer? The villi is increasing the surface area to have the numerous finger-like projections, which is helping to increase the surface area. Next, the digested food is absorbed by the blood and transported to all the cells in the body. The undigested food passes into the large intestine. Inside the large intestine, only the water and the salt is absorbed in large intestine. The waste material is stored in rectum, later removed through the anus. The movement is regulated by the anal sphincter muscle. Means here also, like there in the stomach also we studied one sphincter muscle, and here the anal sphincter muscle is the function of that anal sphincter muscle is the movement is that undigested food movement is regulated by that anal sphincter muscle. And the food taken during the nutrition used to provide energy to various life processes. And whatever we studied so far, it is regarding the digestion. Next class we will learn how that digested food, the glucose which is giving that energy, that we will learn in the form of that respiration. Thank you.